Some connections don't feel new, they feel familiar. A Cancer woman doesn't rush toward love, she senses it first. She reads energy before she trusts words. She notices the pauses, the tone shifts, the emotions underneath the surface. And when she meets a Scorpio man, something subtle but undeniable happens. He doesn't overwhelm her. He doesn't skim the surface. He meets her in the quiet. There's a stillness between them that feels intentional, a depth that doesn't need to announce itself, an understanding that builds without performance. Where others may see intensity, she sees honesty. Where others feel intimidated, she feels intrigued because she recognizes that depth. She carries it too. When a Cancer woman and a Scorpio man connect romantically, it rarely feels casual. It feels layered, intentional, almost private, even in the beginning. It's the kind of bond that forms beneath the surface before either of them fully acknowledges it. And once it forms, it moves like a current, steady, emotional, and powerful. Let's explore the romantic connection between the Cancer woman and the Scorpio man, why it feels so natural, so magnetic, and so deeply understood from the very start. Chapter 1: Recognition Without Words. When these two meet, there is rarely confusion, there is recognition. The Cancer woman leads with emotional radar. She feels energy before she trusts words. And Scorpio, being ruled by depth and instinct, does not perform for people he doesn't respect. But with her, something softens. Not immediately, not obviously, but something in him shifts. She doesn't try to decode him aggressively. She simply observes. She senses what remains unspoken. And Scorpio men are rarely met by someone who does not flinch at their intensity. To her, his depth doesn't feel threatening, it feels honest. To him, her emotional intuition doesn't feel intrusive, it feels safe, like two oceans realizing they share the same current. Scorpio men are used to being misread. They are often labeled intense, secretive, guarded, but at their core, they are selective. They reveal themselves in layers, not because they seek control, but because vulnerability is sacred to them. The Cancer woman understands sacredness. She doesn't rush him to explain himself. She doesn't force intimacy before it is earned. Instead, she meets his gaze and holds it steady, calm, unafraid. And in that silent exchange, recognition forms. It feels less like meeting someone new and more like encountering someone who already understands the language you speak internally. No declarations, no dramatic confessions, just a quiet knowing. And that quiet knowing is where their story begins. Chapter 2: Emotional Safety. A Scorpio man is not drawn in by charm alone. He is drawn in by emotional safety. And a Cancer woman embodies safety in a way that feels instinctive rather than strategic. She doesn't demand access to his inner world. She creates an environment where he wants to open it. There's a difference. Conversations don't feel transactional. They don't feel like interviews or performances. They unfold slowly, naturally. She listens in a way that makes him feel studied but not judged. And Scorpio men notice that immediately. He may not compliment her openly at first. He may not rush into grand gestures. Instead, he observes. He watches how she handles sensitive information. He pays attention to how she speaks about people who aren't present. He quietly evaluates whether she is emotionally trustworthy, because for him, attraction without trust is meaningless. The Cancer woman doesn't realize how powerful her consistency is. Her warmth isn't dramatic, it's steady. She remembers the small details. She checks in subtly. She responds to emotional shifts without being asked. To him, that feels rare. Scorpio men live with emotional intensity beneath the surface. They feel deeply but do not expose it casually. When he senses that she won't weaponize his vulnerability, something inside him begins to settle. And that settling is seductive, not in a flashy way, not in a performative way, but in the way that makes him lean closer during conversations, in the way he begins sharing stories he doesn't tell others, in the way his guarded posture softens around her without him consciously deciding to. For a Scorpio man, feeling safe is arousing, and the Cancer woman doesn't seduce him by trying. She seduces him by being emotionally reliable, and that, to him, feels intoxicating. Chapter 3: The Psychic Undercurrent. As their connection deepens, something subtle begins to form beneath the surface. It's not dramatic, it's not chaotic, it's intuitive. Cancer women live through emotional perception. They feel shifts before they are explained, a change in tone, a heaviness behind someone's eyes, the unspoken meaning in a short text message. And Scorpio men, they communicate in undercurrents. He may not verbalize everything he feels, but his energy always carries information. And what makes this pairing distinct is that she can read it instinctively. There will be moments where she senses something is off before he admits it. Moments where he looks at her and she already knows the answer. Conversations that don't require full sentences. It's telepathic. It's the kind of connection where eye contact says more than dialogue, where silence feels full instead of empty, where emotional alignment happens without rehearsal. For the Cancer woman, this creates a feeling of closeness that goes beyond attraction. She doesn't feel like she's guessing, she feels tuned in. For the Scorpio man, this is disarming in the best way. He is used to compartmentalizing, to revealing pieces of himself strategically. But when she senses him without forcing him, it lowers his defenses naturally. They begin to operate like two emotional currents moving in the same direction. But this depth also creates intensity because when two people feel each other that clearly, distance becomes noticeable. Shifts become magnified. Small emotional changes don't go unnoticed. The bond starts to feel private, almost sacred, as if there is a language only they understand. And once that private current forms, it becomes very difficult to replace because it isn't just chemistry, it's emotional recognition in motion. Chapter 4: Protection, Devotion, and Emotional Loyalty. As the bond strengthens, something instinctive awakens in the Scorpio man. Protection. Not the loud performative kind, not dominance for the sake of ego, but a quiet, unwavering sense that she matters. Scorpio men are deeply selective about who they attach to. They do not offer emotional loyalty casually, but once a Cancer woman enters that inner circle, the shift is tangible. His attention sharpens, his awareness heightens. He becomes alert to anything that could disturb her emotional security. He notices who speaks to her. He notices what affects her mood. He notices when she is overwhelmed, even if she insists she's fine. And for the Cancer woman, this feels reassuring. She is naturally nurturing. She tends to hold space for others, often absorbing their emotions without complaint. To feel emotionally guarded for once, to feel prioritized, can feel deeply comforting. There is a tenderness in this dynamic. She softens further because she feels safe. He deepens further because he feels trusted. Devotion grows quietly between them. But what makes this connection powerful is not just protection, it's emotional loyalty. Both signs value it intensely. Neither treats commitment as casual. When they attach with memory, with emotional permanence. The Cancer woman remembers how he looked at her the first night they spoke deeply. The Scorpio man remembers every vulnerable thing she has ever shared. Their loyalty is not loud, it's internal, and because of that, it feels unshakable. In its healthiest form, this becomes a partnership rooted in mutual guarding of each other's hearts, a shared understanding that what they are building is not to be mishandled. It isn't about ownership, it's about emotional allegiance. And when both are mature, that allegiance feels steady, grounding, and profoundly intimate. Chapter 5: Why It Feels So Deep So Fast. One of the most common experiences Cancer women describe with Scorpio men is this: it felt deep almost immediately. Not rushed, not reckless, but layered from the beginning. That's because neither of these signs is interested in staying on the surface for long. A Cancer woman connects through emotional meaning. She wants to know what shaped you, what hurt you, what made you who you are. Small talk feels empty to her after a while. She is searching for resonance. A Scorpio man lives in psychological depth. He is wired to explore motives, fears, desires, and hidden truths. Even when he appears calm, his mind is analyzing emotional subtext. So when they begin talking, conversations bypass the superficial stage quickly. They find themselves discussing childhood memories, personal philosophies, emotional patterns, trust, loyalty, betrayal, healing. And because both are comfortable in those waters, the connection accelerates naturally. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like relief, relief that you don't have to shrink your emotional range, relief that you don't have to explain why you care so deeply, relief that someone else values intensity instead of fearing it. For the Cancer woman, this depth feels validating. She feels emotionally met. For the Scorpio man, it feels rare. He doesn't feel misunderstood, he feels recognized. That mutual recognition creates emotional momentum, and when two people bond through depth instead of distraction, time can feel compressed. Weeks feel like months, months feel like years. It's not because they're rushing, it's because they're connecting where most people never even attempt to go. And that depth, when mutual, makes the bond feel unforgettable from the start. Chapter 6: Emotional Depth Meets Emotional Memory. As the relationship unfolds, something even more binding begins to take shape: emotional memory. A Cancer woman does not love in fragments. She loves with recollection. She remembers how someone made her feel, the tone of their voice during a vulnerable confession, the way their energy shifted when they were tired, the softness in their eyes when they felt safe. Her heart catalogs emotional moments. And a Scorpio man, he may not verbalize it, but he remembers everything. The first time she opened up about a fear, the subtle insecurity she tried to hide behind humor, the exact sentence she said that made him feel understood. Both signs attach through depth, but they also attach through memory. That's why this connection feels so difficult to shake once it forms. They don't just remember events, they remember emotional states. If she once held him while he revealed something raw, that moment imprints. If he once defended her quietly in a room full of people, she will never forget it. This creates a bond that feels layered over time, even in a short period, but it also means emotional wounds carry weight, because when two people remember each other deeply, distance doesn't feel neutral. It feels noticeable. Shifts in tone feel significant. Silence feels heavier than it would in other pairings. The upside is profound intimacy. The responsibility is emotional care. For the Cancer woman, this dynamic can feel safe because she senses he doesn't forget her heart. For the Scorpio man, it feels meaningful because she doesn't treat connection as disposable. Together, they build something rooted not just in passion, but in remembrance. And that kind of bond lingers long after a moment passes. Chapter 7, The Private World They Create. As their connection stabilizes, something beautiful begins to form around them, a private, emotional world. Cancer women naturally create home wherever they feel emotionally secure. Home isn't just a physical place, it's a feeling, a shared language, a rhythm between two people that makes the outside world quieter. With a Scorpio man, that private world becomes intensely intimate. He is not a man who spreads his emotional energy everywhere. He is selective, intentional, protective of what he shares. So when he chooses her, when he lets her into that interior space, it feels exclusive, not in a performative way, but in a sacred way. Inside this private world, they are softer with each other than they are with anyone else. She sees his humor that few people see. He witnesses her vulnerability without her usual guard of composure. There are inside jokes, long conversations late at night, comfortable silences that feel full rather than awkward. For the Cancer woman, this creates emotional anchoring. She thrives when love feels intentional and contained rather than scattered. She feels cherished when she senses that what they share is not easily replicated elsewhere. For the Scorpio man, this shared privacy feels grounding. He values depth over variety. And when he feels emotionally aligned with someone, he prefers to invest deeply rather than widely. But what makes this dynamic powerful is mutual discretion. They don't overshare their bond with outsiders. They don't dilute it with constant external validation. They hold it close. And when a Cancer woman and Scorpio man build something private and protected together, it becomes less about display and more about depth. Feels like something chosen, something guarded, something meaningful. Chapter 8, Emotional Intensity Without Fear. One of the reasons this pairing feels so natural is this. Neither of them is afraid of emotional intensity. A Cancer woman feels deeply, but she doesn't run from depth. She may retreat when overwhelmed, but she does not dismiss emotion as weakness. To her, feeling is information, it's connection, it's truth. Scorpio man operates the same way, just more internally. He experiences emotion with magnitude, loyalty, desire, hurt, protectiveness, all of it runs strong beneath his composed exterior. And while some partners may find that intimidating, the Cancer woman rarely does. She understands intensity because she carries her own. When he expresses something with weight, she doesn't label him dramatic. She listens. When he grows quiet and introspective, she doesn't immediately panic. She senses that he is processing and that mutual comfort with depth allows their bond to deepen without either of them feeling too much. There is a kind of emotional bravery here. They can talk about jealousy without dismissing it. They can discuss fears without mocking them. They can admit attachment without pretending to be detached. For the Cancer woman, this feels validating. She doesn't feel like she has to tone herself down to be digestible. For the Scorpio man, it feels grounding. He doesn't feel like he has to split himself into light and dark to be accepted. Together, they create space for full spectrum emotion. And when two people feel safe enough to bring their entire emotional range into a relationship without being shamed for it, intimacy expands, not loudly, not chaotically, but deeply. And that depth becomes the foundation that keeps them emotionally aligned. Chapter 9, The Way They Choose Each Other. As time passes, what makes this connection enduring is not just intensity, it's choice. A Cancer woman loves with devotion, but she does not give her heart endlessly to someone who treats it casually. Once she feels secure, she invests fully, but that investment is intentional. She is not chasing chaos, she is choosing depth. A Scorpio man operates the same way. Despite his mystique, he is not scattered in love. He is selective. He studies character, he watches consistency, and when he decides someone belongs in his inner world, that decision is not impulsive. It is deliberate. What makes their bond powerful is that they recognize that same seriousness in each other. She sees that he doesn't flirt recklessly with her emotions. He sees that she doesn't entertain connection lightly. There's an unspoken understanding. We are not here to waste each other's time. That awareness builds quiet respect. The Cancer woman feels reassured knowing he is not emotionally careless. The Scorpio man feels grounded knowing she is not emotionally unpredictable. And because both value loyalty so deeply, commitment feels natural rather than forced. It isn't about dramatic declarations, it isn't about constant reassurance, it's about consistency, showing up, keeping confidences, protecting what has been shared. This creates a bond that feels steady rather than fragile. Even when life becomes stressful or complicated, there is a sense that the connection itself is not easily shaken. They don't choose each other loudly, they choose each other quietly and repeatedly. And in a world where many relationships are built on convenience, that kind of intentional devotion feels rare. Chapter 10: Who feels this connection the strongest? Not every Cancer woman and Scorpio man will experience this bond with the same intensity. When this connection feels overwhelming, magnetic, unforgettable, almost consuming, it's usually activating something deeper in the chart. Moon placements are the first thing to look at. If either of them has a Cancer moon or Scorpio moon, the emotional pull intensifies dramatically. The moon governs attachment, safety, memory. When moon energy is involved, the bond doesn't feel casual. It feels personal, instinctual, hard to detach from. Venus and Mars contacts add another layer. If his Venus falls in her eighth house or her moon activates his eighth house, the connection moves beyond romance into transformation. The eighth house is psychological merging. It's intimacy that changes you. If her Venus or moon falls into his fourth house, the house of home and emotional roots, he may feel an unexpected sense of familiarity around her, as if she belongs in his private life more naturally than others have. Scorpio placements in the first, fifth, seventh, or eighth house amplify magnetism. Cancer placements in the fourth or seventh house amplify emotional bonding. Even Pluto aspects, especially Pluto conjunct Moon, Venus, or ascendant, can make this connection feel fated, intense, and deeply imprinted. But here's the most important piece: when water dominates both charts, multiple Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces placements, emotional recognition happens quickly and deeply. That's when it stops feeling like attraction and starts feeling like inevitability, because astrology doesn't just describe compatibility, it describes where the soul feels activated. And when those activation points align, this connection doesn't just feel strong, it feels transformative. Closing: the love that never fades. There's something many Scorpio men quietly admit over time. They have a soft spot for Cancer women. Not always loudly, not always publicly, but somewhere in their emotional memory, the Cancer woman often occupies a place that feels different from everyone else because she reached places in him that most people never see. She understood the silences, she didn't rush the layers. She met his depth without trying to control it or expose it. And that kind of understanding is not easily forgotten. For the Cancer woman, The connection often feels just as personal. She remembers the way he looked at her when something meaningful was said, the quiet loyalty, the sense that he was paying attention even when he wasn't speaking much at all. It's the kind of bond that settles into memory rather than disappearing. And sometimes, even when life moves in different directions, even when the relationship itself doesn't last, the emotional imprint remains in a quiet, enduring way. The Scorpio man may go on to live an entirely different life, but somewhere in the back of his mind, there's often still a softness when he thinks of her. Because Cancer women don't just pass through someone's life, they leave a feeling behind. Scorpio men, who remember emotional truth more than almost anyone, rarely forget the woman who once understood their depths without asking them to become someone else. And maybe that's the quiet truth about certain connections. They may change form over time, but the part of you that once recognized each other never completely disappears.